So if your body has a immune response to gluten, it can have a immune response then to your own thyroid gland. Hey everyone, this is Dr. Barrett. I'm a board-certified chiropractic physician with a passion and emphasis in functional nutrition. We can't wait to add value to your health as well as the health of your family. Thanks for listening in to the Real Health Podcast.
Hey, before we jump into today's episode, do me a favor. If you like this episode and you like hearing from Dr. B, share it on your Facebook, share it on your Instagram. We're really trying to get this health movement out. So without further ado, let's get to today's episode. Welcome back to the Real Health Podcast with Dr. B. This is Lane, your host. Hope everybody is doing fantastic. And you had a chance to listen to part 1 of the autoimmunity talk with Dr. B. If you have not had a chance to go back, make sure you do, because the episodes will build on each other. And today we're going to dive into food allergies. We're going to answer some questions about where they begin, and then also when food allergies can become, something, autoimmunity. When can they become more serious into autoimmunity? And so with that, Dr. B, anything you want to recap from episode 1 that we're going to segue into today's part 2 episode?
Well, we will. We'll kind of, today we'll bridge last episode to today's episode by recapping a little bit about loss, immune tolerance, and when we don't have immune tolerance to our environment, what happens when now we start developing food reactions that then cause autoimmunity. So I think in this episode, we're just going to kind of help bridge the gap, but it all comes down to intestinal permeability, right? And so that's the common link. So we'll touch base on that here in a little bit.
If you haven't had a chance, just a reminder, go back and listen to part 1. But before we jump into part 2, let's do the get to know Dr. B portion of the show a little bit. So, all right. So, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Yeah. So I'm going to say an introvert because even though most people who know me would think I'm an extrovert, I get really tired after talking a lot, and so I just want to chill out. I want to work out by myself usually. And then I re-energize being at home by myself. So those are moments that allow me to re-energize. So I would say I'm an introvert. And if there's a party and I don't really know a lot of people, you're gonna find me. You're gonna have to initiate the conversation. Yeah. I'm not usually gonna initiate. So
that's interesting.
Introvert.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so what was your dream job as a child?
So most people would probably not know this, but I was a gamer as a kid.
All right. Give me a game.
Yep. So it was really Halo as I was getting into high school. And we'd link up Xboxes with an Ethernet cord and play on 2 separate TVs.
I was a PlayStation guy.
Okay, yeah. I was an Xbox. So, computer science, that's actually where I was going to school, computer engineer. And then, hence the introvert, I guess. It's just about a computer. I'm so happy I'm not doing that. And then senior year in high school, life was changed by a chiropractor, so I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah, here we are today.
Mm-hmm.
Last question. If you won $10 million tomorrow, what would you spend it on?
Yeah, so it's, again, tough question. So the immediate thought is I want to pay off all my debt, right? Just be debt-free, house, have some finances in provisionally savings, whatever. But probably something I haven't communicated maybe with you or many people is I have a vision for a health factory retreat. So Health Factory Retreat would be a nonprofit organization where we purchase a large amount of clean land, have a center lodge with a bunch of tiny cabins, and we have people come in who are sick, and then we walk them on a journey to restoration of health. So maybe they were just diagnosed with cancer or an autoimmune condition or Lyme disease, whatever it is, and they can stay there on the retreat center, whether it's a week, a month, a year, and we can cook for them, serve them, love them, and it's just a way for people to heal. So that's the vision. So I would immediately start that process.
Well, you didn't realize you'd tell everyone your vision with that question. It's out there now.
That's right. It's going to happen. I know it is. It's just a matter of time.
Man, that is amazing. It really is. That's just a testament to your willingness and giving back to this community. That's really cool.
My wife had a vision when we got married that she had a dream that she saw herself. She's like, hey, I think we're gonna have bed and breakfast, and I'm like, well, let's talk about that a little bit more, and really through that it evolved into, it's not a bed and breakfast, it's a health factory, it's a wellness retreat center, but she saw herself in the dream vividly serving people, changing their sheets and everything like that. And that's our heart, is to be able to help people on their journey to health, but serve the people that are sickest and give them a place to truly heal. Mm-hmm. So that's it.
I just saw her while I was walking in, and I meant to ask her if I could get a couple dozen of those cookies that we spoke about on the previous episode.
Those chocolate chip cookies, man, they're so good.
So part 2 of the episode today, why food allergies, why they're so prevalent, and when they turn into autoimmunity. So real quick, I'm going to read something that I found online, and it is from foodallergy.org. So, I'm sure this is, they've done some studies on this. So there are 15 million Americans have food allergies that can cause a serious medical condition. Here are the 8 common foods that I'm sure most of everyone is aware of, but just to recap: milk, eggs, peanut, tree nuts, soy, wheat, fish, and shellfish. And this statistic, Dr. B, it's crazy to think about. It now affects 1 in 13 children.
Wow.
1 in 13 children. And the disease is becoming more common with childhood prevalence, that's 50% from 1997 to 2011. So that's almost 10 years ago, some of that data. So I'm sure it's even higher than that.
It is, man. It is, and it's also one part of the immune system. There's multiple parts of the immune system that react to foods. In a sense, they create different reactions. So there's IgE, IgG, food responses, food sensitivities. So they're probably just talking about food IgE responses,
which are the most common. And that's, just to recap real quick, I grew up with food allergies my entire life, severe peanut allergies, shellfish allergies, and I believe through my diet, nutrition, and kind of my lifestyle, I believe I overcame that, and now I enjoy just about anything. I eat anything. And so if you're a parent on here, if you're someone on here that has food allergies, let me just say, I understand. It is very difficult. And, I would be the one that would go to a restaurant and you ask, what do you fry your foods in? Can you please make sure that you do not have cross-contamination? And so I understand. I understand it. And I hope by listening to today's podcast, Dr. B can shed some light on where they came from. Are there things that we can do to help minimize them? That's kind of what I hope we can get out of today's episode. So with that, how do we develop them? How do we develop food allergies?
Well, it has to go through a stage process, and the first step is going to be a breakdown of intestinal lining. So that we would just consider this really diet and environmental factors start to create inflammation within the gut, and through that, whether it be multiple antibiotics or medications, chemicals with our food, or lack of soil-based organisms or fermented organisms, lack of probiotics, sooner or later our digestive system is unable to break down food properly. So we just don't digest, and then we don't clear out what our body doesn't need. So what happens is, over time, food starts to become, the proteins in it, when they get broken down, they don't get fully broken down. They start passing through our intestinal barrier. Mm-hmm. And this is really important, because then the food isn't broken down properly, so the bacteria within our gut start to feed off of these, we'll just say undigested food particles, and actually start to release toxins. And these toxins, they're liposaccharides.
Okay.
So these toxins start to create inflammation within the digestive lining, which further enhance intestinal permeability, leading to further undigested proteins that get into the gut lymph system that then go into our circulatory system. So we have a diet, environmental factors that lead to intestinal permeability and gut microbiome changes.
Okay.
And then step 3 is once those changes start to happen, we start to leak more proteins into the circulatory system that are undigested. And it also, our gut starts feeding off of these undigested food antigens that starts creating systemic inflammation.
Walk me through, just real quick, someone that is highly allergic to peanuts. Let's say it was me 15 years ago. I ingest a peanut. What happens? It goes in. What does it do?
Well, so we would call that an IgE allergy. Okay. So it's a little bit different than what we'd also call an IgG food allergy. So an IgE food allergy is a very excessive allergenic response to food, like if you were allergic to bees and you got a bee sting and it swells everything up and you're about to die. So that is just an excessive immune response, usually brought on by environmental factors like vaccines. Okay, and we see a lot of egg reactions, high egg reactions, peanut reactions, because those are used as mediums within vaccines. So that's why we see that as being correlated. But that really, all that is a very excessive immune response, and so we're just creating this heightened mast cell, B cell formation of histamine, releasing that, and it's creating a lot of swelling. So that's a part of the immune system. There's another part, though, that is an IgE, and this is going to affect more people. Okay. So maybe 1 in 13 has the IgE response. You know that, it's peanuts or it's eggs or whatever, and it creates the anaphylactic reaction. Most people know that. The other 12 out of 13, they don't know probably what's called an IgE food reaction, which is they consume a food and it's undigested. The proteins leak into the bloodstream circulatory system, and then they create a reaction, an inflammation response over the course of 2, 3, 4, 5 days.
Okay.
And then that's what really can create subclinical food allergy systemic issues. Okay, so eczema, for instance, is a perfect example.
That's what I was going to ask.
Asthma is a great allergies. Okay. And then as we age, autoimmunity.
That's the link.
That's the link.
Got it. Okay.
So what happens is the IgG food reactions that typically take place, the food sensitivities, when those proteins release into the circulatory system, they usually have a place where they reside, a certain tissue in the body that they kind of latch onto. Well, every single food has a protein structure, okay? And so that protein structure, that's why, for instance, okay, you got a peanut allergy,
correct,
but you could have peanut oil because the oil doesn't have any protein in it. So you're not going to react to peanut oil.
I was so scared I didn't even have peanut oil.
Wow. Yeah. So you could so people who have anaphylactic reactions to peanuts can actually eat at Chick-fil-A.
I was so scared. It was so interesting.
Oh, no. Right?
Yeah, I was.
And it's scary, especially if you don't know, right?
Correct.
If you don't have a doctor really educating you on the cause and what's going on in your body and what you can and can't have and what you need to be mindful of. But yeah, it's scary, man. Kid goes to emergency room needing shots and think they're going to die, right? So I had the same response as an asthmatic child. So when you have those proteins, let's just say you eat gluten, okay? Gluten protein has an amino acid sequence. So those amino acids, when that's broken down, that sequence of amino acids, well, every food mimics a tissue in the body, okay? So gluten, technically, gluten, the protein structure of gluten, molecularly, or we call it molecular mimicry, it mimics the thyroid gland.
Okay.
So if your body has a immune response to gluten, it can have a immune response then to your own thyroid gland.
Wow.
So here's where it all kind of comes together.
Okay.
People who have like Hashimoto's thyroiditis or Graves' disease or thyroid problems, a lot of times they'll read literature and says, hey, stay off gluten. Why? Because of cross-reactivity. When your immune system over time becomes compromised and we lose tolerance and we become reactive to proteins and food, for instance, gluten, the immune system then starts to look for anything like gluten in the body. And your thyroid just happens to be similar in amino acid sequence to gluten, so it starts to attack the thyroid gland.
Wow.
All right, and so every food technically has a potential cross-reactivity to an organ in your body. Wow. And that's where food doesn't just become a food sensitivity, it then becomes a potential autoimmune trigger.
Because there was an underlying problem in the beginning.
That's right. And it goes back to gut permeability and microbiome imbalance. So if you have a good microbiome and you have a healthy intestinal permeability barrier, then you're not going to allow these leaky proteins to get to the circulatory system. You're going to digest them properly in the gut, absorb them, assimilate them, and they'll never get to that point of getting into the circulatory system of the bloodstream. That's why food allergies can also be, IgG food responses can be reversed. Because if you can change immunity, which happens in the gut, 80% really of the immune system is in the digestive system, and you can seal up your intestinal barrier, then your reactivity to foods lessens and lessens and lessens. So I've had kids come in, I've had a family that's been under my care for 12 years, ever since I've been in practice. When they came to me, antibiotics, steroids, inhalers, Claritin. I mean, everything to continue to suppress the immune system, multiple food reactions. They were reactive to everything. EpiPen always.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. They are so healthy now. They haven't been on a round of antibiotics in who knows how long. They're in high school. They don't have all their old food allergies. Wow. So your immune system can just as much become defective, okay? It can become tolerant again to some degree.
I was never told that. That's what is so remarkable, is I was told that I would live with a severe peanut allergy for the rest of my life. And I know there are people listening to this that have been told that. And to hear the link between how you've linked it together, I mean, that's remarkable.
If you can calm the immune system down, heal the immune system, okay, remove the offending foods, right, and then once everything's reset, if you can microdose these proteins slowly back into the immune system, then you can create what we call immune tolerance again, okay. And so you got to work with a skilled practitioner to make sure that happens. Yeah. And it takes a long time for you to heal the immune system. But as you know today, the reality is you can heal. But I would say the chronic usage again of antibiotics, stress, and poor diet with the lack of soil and fermented-based organisms have led us to the crisis of food allergies. Vaccinations, antibiotics, corticosteroids. Okay, and then on the other side, what we should be having is bacteria, diverse diet, plants playing in the dirt that's not sprayed with Roundup. So we should be having that, and we shouldn't be having all of these medications, antibiotics, vaccines. And so then because those two things are flipped, it's why we have food reactions, food intolerances, food allergies, environmental allergies. And that's not just food. It's loss of immune tolerance. Your immune system, because of that transition, now is intolerant not just of foods, but of dust and pollen and trees and all that. And it keeps going on and on. That's why we just have systemic allergy issues.
Yeah. Well, to that point, there's so many tests out there, food allergy tests. How do parents, how do you tell the difference? What should people look for? What should they be doing if they're listening to this and they want to say, let's look into this?
Yeah, so this is where the trouble starts for a lot of parents, because they go to let's just say an allergist, okay, and they're going to run like a back prick test and say, hey, these are all the things you're potentially
been there
to.
And done that.
Yeah, or you're going to know because the kid eats a nut and blows up, right? So those are obvious. And it's almost like we'll just put that on the shelf because they're so easily tested, just because you can see them happen so quickly. The harder part is testing for a delayed food reaction, an IgG reaction. And that's where the allergist fails. A lot of times they just don't have a good clinical understanding of food reactions that happen over a time period. So a lot of times that you're going to go with eczema to an allergist and they're like, well, nothing showed up. I hear this all the time. You have no food allergies. Here's a corticosteroid, right? And or here's we do these shots to help suppress immunity. The difference is when we look at food reactions, we're looking at an IgG food antibody response through a company called Cyrex Labs. They're really the forefront leaders in autoimmunity as well as food antibody formation. So they look at what's great is cooked food and raw food. There's a difference. And so let's just say the allergist just looks at one area, right? Just raw. Well, when you cook, proteins change structure. When they're heated, the amino acids change. Eggs are a perfect example. What happens to the clear egg when it's heated? What color does it turn?
White.
Well, the white is because the protein changes its structure, okay? So when we cook foods, we can actually become reactive to a cooked food, like for instance, rice, okay? We can be reactive to cooked rice, but non-reactive to uncooked rice protein.
Remarkable.
Crazy, right? So we have to look at cooked and uncooked, and we have to look at the IgG food system. So that's where working with functional nutrition, functional medicine practitioners is really going to be helpful. It's not pointless to do like the online allergy food sensitivity reports, but you really want to work with someone to dive in and look at that antibody formation.
Well, and there's so many people out there living with food allergies. I mean, I can't imagine. I can say for myself, I would have known this back then. It would have been, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it as soon as possible.
And here's a good solution too. If you're listening to this podcast and you are like, hey, I just don't have anyone in my area. Well, one, you can always call the office. We can connect with you. But two, elimination-based diet is great. So you jump on like a Whole30 plus removing the big autoimmune triggers, or an paleo AI, or paleo autoimmune program, or you could just type in elimination diet. And you start off with kind of some bare bone foods that are really known to not be super reactive. And then you start adding foods back in every few days to see your response. So maybe you get a brain fog, maybe you get a headache, maybe you get joint pain. Well, those are all indicators that food is probably having a reaction with your body. So you can do it on your own without testing, but testing is just so much more effective. Because again, elimination diets, a lot of times you're consuming rice and chicken in the beginning, yet those can be reactive to the body.
You think we can correct them?
Yeah.
Food allergies?
We can. Because I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
So it goes.
And I've lived it, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. And it just goes back to time, consistency, and healing the gut. That is the big piece of it. We've got to heal the digestive system. We've got to heal that barrier so that we're not leaking those proteins into the circulatory system, creating that cross reactivity.
Any other nuggets you want to share when it comes to food allergies and the link to autoimmunity that we may have not covered so far?
I would say if you are dealing with autoimmunity, immediately I'm going to tell you today, get off gluten, get off dairy. Okay, those are two big offenders. And a response I hear all the time is, I don't feel much different. Well, you have to give it time for your immune system to heal and your inflammation levels to come down. But I promise you, there's not one autoimmune patient I've worked with that I've said, hey, yeah, I think you're good to stay on gluten. I've never said that. Every test I've ever run, I've always said, hey, off gluten, off dairy. Those are big protein structures that are hard to digest. So my big ones are going to be gluten, dairy, casein, and then we start getting into soy, corn, and then we can start getting into some nuts and seeds. But I would say those are the big two. Immediately start pulling yourself off. If you have chronic allergies, chronic immune deficiency, you're compromised, or autoimmunity already, or your kid is just struggling, get them off gluten and get them off dairy ASAP.
Yeah, that's so good.
If you do that, step 1, remove, and then step 2, replace. So we got to replace microbiome. So then that's when we start getting into probiotics. And we want to, we talked about that on the last episode. We need diverse probiotics. So a lot of quantity and a lot of diversity. So soil-based probiotics or spore-based probiotics and fermented-based probiotics. You need both, and start adding those bacteria back into the digestive system to start regulating that immune system. And usually just those two things can help so much.
So good. Hearing the link between autoimmunity and food allergies, I've learned so much in just 25 minutes. And this is exactly what people need to hear. So ending today, part 2, anything part 3 you want to give us a little bit of a sneak peek that the listeners can look forward to?
Yeah, anytime I deal with autoimmunity, there's always 2 panels I run: food reactions and pathogens. Okay, so just as much, here's what's crazy, just as much as gluten can cross-react with thyroid, okay, Epstein-Barr can cross-react with the brain, or mold can cross-react with certain tissue within the brain. Mycoplasma can cross-react to joints and cause rheumatoid arthritis. So if you've been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, then a lot of times, if you haven't done a pathogen assessment, then you're missing out on a huge link to the cause of your autoimmunity. So we're going to talk through that next week.
Wow. Part 3, watch out for that. This was part 2. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the Real Health Podcast with Dr. B, and we will see you next time.
Before you hit X, hold on 1 second. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast today with Dr. B. 2 things that would really help the Real Health Podcast movement. 1, share it on your social media, your Facebook, your Instagram, wherever you're on a social network. And 2, if you go to Apple Podcast and you scroll down, give us a 5-star rating and give us a review. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you next episode.